Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to bring this evening to order. My name is Richard Joy, and I'm the Executive Director of ULI Toronto. And if you know anything about ULI Toronto, we start on time, and that is now. So welcome back to this, our 9th annual Meet the Chiefs Planner Dinner, celebrating the public sector visionaries and the important synergies of the entire land and development ecosystem. Your dinner program includes the name and bios of nearly 50 senior public officials attending this evening, an incredible turnout. And this is why I really do need everybody to be quiet. I would like to ask our public officials to stand up and to be recognized by us all today. There should be about 50 of you, so please stand up. And if you're not a public official, please sit down. So all the public officials, please stand up and let's acknowledge you. In true Urban Land Institute fashion, this dinner brings together the broadest array of real estate and land use professionals across both the private and public sectors to advance the global mission to shape the future of the built environment for transformative impacts in communities worldwide. Events like tonight are why we call ULI Toronto the home of the industry. As always, we begin with a land acknowledgement. As a Toronto region-based organization, we acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers and immigrants and newcomers in this generation or generations past. We'd also like to acknowledge and honor those who've come here involuntarily, particularly those who are descendants from those who were brought here through enslavement. We'll be saying some more about Truth and Reconciliation later in the program, our Chair of Mission Advancement, but one of the things you would know about ULI Toronto is that this is a space that we've leaned in with particular vigor, and if you haven't been involved with some of the work we've been doing in this space, I hope you will be soon, because it is something that is truly exemplifies why we exist as an organization. A quick program note. You may have noticed, those of you who are political junkies like myself, that today was the federal budget, and unfortunately that meant that Minister Ahmed Hussein was unable to join us tonight, having confirmed some while ago, so I apologize for that, but we'll get him back another time. By now, most of you will know that ULI will play host to the first major Urban Land Institute International Conference in our city since 1985. So with that, we're going to cue the video, then I'll ask my chair, Michelle, to come up and speak to us next. Cue the video.
I will fly anywhere to go to the next ULI event.
Everybody you're meeting is a good connection for you.
There is such a wealth of knowledge. It's incredible. If you are in development, ULI is your best investment.
I'll book my flights tomorrow.
It is very exciting to see the spring meeting finally on the near horizon. I feel like we've been talking about it for 4 years now. So fingers crossed. I won't mention the last round we did of this event. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Ackerman of the Kilmer Group and chair of ULI Toronto. As you just saw, we are just weeks away from finally hosting the 4,000 plus International ULI Spring Meeting, 49 days to be precise. And with registrations already nearing 3,500, we are tracking towards the largest spring meeting conference ever held. I highly encourage, yeah, we could clap for that. I highly encourage everyone here this evening to register for this unique industry gathering, the first time in Canada since 2014 when it was convened in Vancouver. The spring meeting is a fantastic opportunity to engage with leaders from every sector of the industry from all across North America. Most of the attendees regularly attend both the spring and fall meetings. Such is the value that delegates find through connections, ideas, insights, speakers, tours, networking events on offer, and more. And of course, we want to show off our urban region, the fastest growing and most dynamic urban real estate market in North America. Before we bring up our keynote speaker, I want to acknowledge and thank all of our table sponsors for tonight's dinner. There are 25 of you, and many of you are also our annual sponsors. Thank you so much. Your support has allowed us to do something quite incredible, and you'll be hearing more about this after our keynote. It is now my privilege to introduce the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Minister Clark was first elected MPP for Leeds-Grenville in a March 4th, 2010 by-election in a 66% vote landslide. Subsequently re-elected 3 times, he is now the MPP for the newly named riding of Leeds-Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes. Steve gained attention across Canada in 1982 when, at the age of 22, and just out of university, he was elected mayor of the city of Brockville. This gained him the title of youngest mayor of Canada and a notation in the Who's Who of Canada. Steve served 3 terms as mayor, and during his tenure was also the president of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Minister Clark was also the chief administrative officer for the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands, and boasts over 40 years of community volunteerism. Of course, to most of us in the room, Minister Clark has been at the helm of what can only be described as the most transformational reforms to planning and development approvals in a generation. Reforms that, among other things, are designed to usher in the largest housing construction boom in our region and province ever. And it is in this capacity that we invite Minister Clark, for the second time, to the Meet the Chief Planners dinner podium. Please welcome to the stage the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Michelle, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Really appreciate the opportunity to be back at the Urban Land Institute, albeit it's really nice to be here in person, right? I think the last time we met was virtual, so it's great to see you all. And I appreciate, Michelle, the opportunity to speak before dinner, because based on what I heard upstairs and what I saw on the floor, there's a lot of great social interaction that's going to take place this evening. So I'll try to be brief and not upset your stomachs too much before dinner. Your organization is a tremendous example of both public and private sectors that are working together to solve problems, look at best practices, and I know that many in the room are going to be very, very excited about the meeting in May. I've also been impressed with the work that you've done with the Accelerating Accessibility Coalition. And I know that around the cabinet table, any discussion we have about housing supply always gets my seatmate at cabinet, the Honorable Raymond Cho, Minister of Seniors and Accessibility, always getting him engaged. And I appreciate the work that you've done. And I want to say to you that Minister Cho and I take the work that the Urban Land Institute's done, and we're going to continue to work with you on your accessibility piece. So I appreciate the work of the coalition. Minister Cho reminds me of the important opportunities we have as our population ages, and I know that my riding, which Michelle talked about, Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, this has become a big issue on the housing side with our local municipal officials. So it's something that we need to continue to work on. So it's great that we're here. It's fantastic to see all of you. I want you to know that your role, both guiding elected officials like myself and the private sector, is really critical to ensuring that our communities are vibrant, sustainable places to live. I firmly believe that if we're going to solve the housing supply crisis, we need all levels of government, the private sector, our nonprofits, every single person who is interested in the housing space. We need to have that collaboration. And I've said that to Minister Hussen many, many times in our federal, provincial, and territorial meetings. I've also, as Michelle indicated, I'm a former president of AMO, and we need to ensure that all of our municipal partners, all 444 municipalities, realize that they have a stake in the housing supply issue. And I'll get to that more in a few moments. You obviously know day to day the challenges that face Ontarians. You live it each and every day. Over the last 20 years, the average resale of a typical home in Ontario, it's increased by more than 400%. You all know that, that in the GTA in particular, resale prices are now well over $1 million. And I've met with many, many mayors outside of the GTA, and prices are continuing to rise. Tenants are facing an incredible strain. And what's more, Ontario, which we've talked about in the legislature many, many more times, is expected to grow by more than 2 million people by 2031. 3/4 of those will be into the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So that situation is not sustainable. That's why the government went to the people last summer, and we pledged to build 1.5 million homes by 2031. It's an incredible goal that many are watching each and every day in the legislature. Since I spoke to you in 2021, the government obviously has been hard at work. This has been our big priority. We've had multiple housing consultations. We've met with municipalities, stakeholders, and the public. We appointed an expert housing affordability task force, and they gave us an extensive report, which is now heralded as our province's long-term housing strategy. Last year, we not only launched a second housing supply action plan, but also a third housing supply action plan. And I'm pleased to say that we've made significant progress on the Housing Affordability Task Force recommendations. We've made progress on 41 of the 75 recommendations. And earlier this month, we appointed members of our Housing Supply Action Plan implementation team, which bring a mix of experience and perspectives on how critical it is to ensure that housing needs meet all of Ontarians and that it's properly addressed as part of the implementation. The new team has worked very, very closely with my previous associate minister, the Honourable Michael Parsa, who's now Ontario's Minister of Children, Community and Social Services as of last Friday. I look forward to my new associate, the Honourable Nina Tangri, who is up to her eyeballs in white briefing binders the last 48 hours, but she's already met with one of the co-chairs of the implementation team, and she's going to be hitting the ground running this month with more meetings as we move that group forward. As you know, we've implemented one of the most significant plans as part of our Housing Supply Action Plan in October. Many of you know it by the name I gave it, the More Homes Built Faster Act. Many of you are more mathematical, so you use that numeric Bill 23. But it contains, in my opinion, a number of very practical measures to cut delays and red tape when it comes to building all types of housing. Thank you. As well, the government, as part of More Homes Built Faster, we're also doing a very housing-focused policy review on a place to grow and the provincial policy statement. The fact is, both a place to grow and the PPS are components of, some will call, quite a complex land use planning system in our province. So we want to have that consultation. We look forward to your advice and guidance as the aim for the province, as it always has been, to try to streamline the provincial-wide planning framework so that municipalities can approve housing faster, but also continue to protect the environment, prime agricultural land, public health, and safety. So it's that balance that the government wants to have, and again, we'll look to experts in the field like yourselves. More homes built faster also reduces the burden on home buyers, one of the most talked about measures in the legislature, which is the freezing, reducing, and in some case eliminating development charges. And we all know that that's top of mind for our municipal partners. I've heard it over and over again with our conversations. I know that development charges pay for important infrastructure, but again, the Housing Affordability Task Force has highlighted the fact of their substantial increase. In some cases, when you look at over the last 2 decades, development charges in some municipalities have gone up 900%. The fees, as I know you all know, ultimately get added to the cost of the home. The task force put it very simply, as development charges go up, the price of homes go up. That's why we've targeted our DC policy to the types of housing we want to make more affordable. Nonprofit housing, attainable housing, selected inclusionary zoning units. Those are the types of units that we want to focus on and provide opportunities in our municipalities. We're also regulating, as you know, the pace of future development charge increases for other types of housing. And we made these changes not only because they're the right things to do, but because young people, new Ontarians, we want to make sure that we have a path to home ownership. Right now, in too many communities, people just don't see it, that there's that opportunity. So we recognize how critical municipalities are, how they need to be able to fund infrastructure, how they need to be able to fund new services for new homes. That's why we're working with our municipal partners. We want to get a better understanding of their finances, including not just their reserves, but also their development charge administration. And we're going to be doing that through a system of audits, but it's going to be through collaboration. We're going to be working together. We're not going to spend a long time doing it. The Premier the other week talked about auditing all municipalities. We're not going to audit all the municipalities. We're going to audit a target group so we can deal with that development charge administration and understand some of the concerns that municipalities have. I'm very encouraged by the fact that the plan that we've implemented are already getting shovels in the ground. And the visit that I made earlier in the month to Durham Region, I saw a wonderful build by Habitat for Humanity GTA and the Durham Region Not-for-Profit Housing Corporation. The changes to our More Homes Built Faster Act provided an opportunity not just to provide them with the savings of about $500,000 worth of development charges, but it also gave me a chance to see how innovative nonprofit housing can continue to thrive and flourish given More Homes Built Faster. I also had the chance to tour that same day. I went to Niagara and looked at an affordable and assisted living project for seniors that, thanks to this bill, will provide them with about $1.3 million in savings that they've admitted that they're going to put right back into amenities for our seniors. You know, it's not going to get put into a bank account. It's actually going to drive more improvements and more opportunities for that seniors living. So thanks to those savings, those expansions are underway. And in fact, many nonprofits have engaged with municipalities to try to look at other opportunities because of More Homes Built Faster. It's a positive change, has an immediate effect, and it's something we want to, again, as part of our consultation with municipalities, build upon for the future. So before I conclude, I want to talk about one more thing, because it happened on Thursday as part of our budget. And my colleague, The Minister of Finance, the Honourable Peter Bethlenfalvy, unveiled the budget on last week. It included a major infusion of funding for our homelessness prevention program. It was an additional $202 million that we're going to be giving to our municipal partners. We now have over $600 million going for homelessness prevention across Ontario over the next 3 years. And it responds directly to the request from our municipal partners and our Indigenous partners for stable, flexible, and predictable funding when it came to homelessness prevention. I'm very pleased with the response that we've received so far, and we want to build upon that success with municipalities moving forward. So thank you. The other piece with the homelessness prevention program, or HPP, because we always have to have in municipal and provincial government, those little letter insignias for our programs. We don't just call them homelessness prevention. We have to add HPP. But we've also added the wraparound services as part of the Ministry of Health and Mental Health and Addictions, which I think is so critical for the success of supportive housing. So I'm so pleased that we were able to take this all-of-government approach and have two ministries working very diligently on the same file. So it is a very, very exciting time. So and you're also great. I figured you'd be eating your salads while I was talking. So you're also very polite and very nice. I thank you. So I just want to talk, just to close, on the progress that we've made. So some of you have heard me talk about the fact that over the last 2 years, we've had a record amount of starts, more housing starts than we've seen in 30 years. I joked, Michelle talked about me being a mayor at age 22 in 1982. I said in my own riding, we haven't seen this type of building since I had a long shoulder-length afro. So, that was a long time ago. The same in terms of housing starts last year was the previous year. So we've had 2 good years. Rental housing, last year we saw a high we haven't seen in over 30 years, really the highest we've seen on record. But you're all smarter than I am. You can all do the math. 100,000 starts times 10 doesn't get me to the 1.5 million. It doesn't get me anywhere close. So things have to continue to evolve when it comes to getting shovels in the ground faster. For us to reach the goal of 1.5 million by 2031, a lot has to happen with all of our partners. So we're going to be launching very soon our 4th Housing Supply Action Plan. I'll have more to say in the coming weeks. So I'll invoke the rules of question period. Won't be called answer period. But I do look forward to our relationship. And I really sincerely mean that. We need to ensure that all of you in this room and all of the partners that you deal with are partners with us, because we cannot do this without you. This is an incredibly ambitious goal. I know this better than anyone. So we need everyone working, and you can rest assured that even though Minister Hussein's not here, he's going to get a call from me tomorrow, because I didn't see much in the budget for housing, and I'm going to need that partnership, right? Just like municipalities are going to need me to provide clarity on some of our reforms, we're going to need to have everyone at the table. So thank you for your vision. Thank you for all the work. Enjoy your dinner. Enjoy your conference. And thanks for welcoming me back with such a positive response. All the best to you. Have a great evening. I'll put your notes back up there, Renee.
Don't start tinkling your glasses yet. Thank you, Minister Clark, for the very insightful keynote. The challenge of building the housing supply we need, as Minister Clark highlighted, is undoubtedly a large one. But the key partners needed to achieve our common goals are in this room this evening, and we hope that future dinners will celebrate tangible progress to achieving this most important objective. My name is Renee Gomes. I'm the SVP of Development at Diamond Corp and the Chair of Mission Advancement here at ULI Toronto. Before we head into the dinner portion of this evening, allow me to briefly highlight some of the ULI global mission work that we've led locally here in Toronto. Obviously, as we have just been discussing, and as the Minister has highlighted, increasing the housing supply across the income spectrum is the most important priority for both the public and the private sectors. But the Urban Land Institute around the world, which just this year expanded to include India, is committed to shaping the future of the built environment for transformative impact in communities worldwide. We are not just building bricks and mortar housing stock, we are building communities that respond to the broad social and environmental challenges confronting us locally and globally. Next week, for example, we will be releasing a special webinar, our second report, Getting to Transit-Oriented Communities, which challenges us to go beyond the broad strokes of aligning higher order transit and urban intensification to ensure that we are carefully leveraging such opportunities to meet critical social and environmental challenges. This winter, we also hosted our second ESG symposium, which focused on the S in ESG. We've learned that there is no playbook or manual for this. We, in this most socially diverse urban region on the planet, need to be global leaders in defining how real estate and development can address the social challenges that include structural racism, income inequality, accessibility, and truth and reconciliation. Richard mentioned that the work we are leading, specifically related to truth and reconciliation, is another space to which there are too few best practices to adopt. So we are on a journey, and we are learning. We are learning that there cannot be reconciliation without truth, as painful as that may be. And for an industry that must work with Indigenous nations on the land we develop, we must do a better job of developing relationships and trust before we bring our plans and visions forward. We've also celebrated our region's great environmental leadership in carbon reduction, including district energy, geothermal, and green standards. And on Environment Week next month, we will examine how many of our members are now going well and beyond building codes and green standards by taking a full life cycle approach from construction to operations to reduce the climate impact of development. We also completed another technical advisory panel, or TAP, to offer advice to Create TO on their repositioning of the former TTC streetcar barns known as the Danforth Garage. And while we have a captive audience of public sector officials, I would be remiss in not plugging TAP as a very cost-effective ULI offering to public agencies at all levels of an assembly of our multidisciplinary experts who will offer their pro bono services to help you work through a land use challenge. Finally, allow me to highlight just one more example of leadership and impact, and that is our role as Secretariat to a new Accelerating Accessibility Coalition, co-chaired by Luke Anderson, Executive Director of Stopgap, and Hila Omar-Kale, Vice President of Social Impact at the Daniels Corporation, both of whom are with us today. Once again, we are helping to facilitate leadership in real estate development that goes beyond building codes and other regulations towards a goal of universal design in new construction. None of this impact work would be possible without the support of our sponsors tonight and throughout the year. Your attendance here tonight gives us the capacity to do this, for which we again say thank you. And with that, you may now please enjoy your dinner.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Andrew Garrett. I'm a senior principal, the real estate portfolio at IMCO, and have the honor of being vice chair this year of ULI Toronto, and really look forward to their engagement and all the things they're doing this year. We're going to turn now to the final part of the program, where we'll have our senior public officials and panel who I have the pleasure to introduce. And our panel will be discussing the geography of supply. So moderating this year, we're lucky to have Mary Frances Turner, very recently retired president of York Region Rapid Transit Corporation, and someone who's known to be ahead of her time in transit-oriented communities in York Region. And our panelists, we have Steve Robichaud, from Chief Planner, Director in Planning and City of Hamilton, Tara Buen-Pinciero, Acting Chief Planner, Director of Planning and Development Services, Public Works Department, Region of Peel. We have the pleasure of Vic Gupta, CEO of Create Toronto, and Heather Gray-Wolf at the end, Chief Development Officer of Infrastructure Ontario. So tonight's panel, we're going to discuss the demand to deliver more housing across the greater Golden Horseshoe has universal buy-in across all levels of government. Some people may debate that. We have the federal release of the budget today. The challenge ahead on how to develop this historic surge and what to deliver and where. So I'll turn the program over to Mary.
Thank you so much. Thank you and good evening. It's my pleasure to be here this evening, and I hope you've all had a great opportunity for discussion at your table. I had a terrific conversations at my table. It was truly enjoyable to be sharing perspectives and appreciation of this important time that we're in, because it is another really important time. First of all, the fact that we're here and we're together and that we can share our experiences and that we come from so many walks of life. And I'm excited to be moderating this panel tonight because we have this terrific panel with all sorts of different approaches, experiences, and structures in which we're looking at this, kind of ambitious time to deliver, a whole new supply of housing. And I always like to think if we were to look out and 10 years or 15 years from now and say, I was part of all that, what would it look like, and what would make you proud to have been part of that next journey that we're being asked to ambitiously undertake? So I'm going to turn it over first to Steve and then to Tara, who can speak to the issue from a planner's point of view, a public servant, chief planner point of view, municipal point of view. Where are we going to go to get at this issue of supply, Steve? Is this going to be a real challenge for you? And then I'll turn to Tara to kind of talk about a little bit of some of the challenges of have we gone far enough with legislation? What other help do we need as municipal planners in order to successfully do our part in lifting this housing supply off the ground? So Steve, over to you.
Thank you very much. I get to speak with sort of two hats, both as the Chief Planner for the City of Hamilton and the Vice Chair of the Regional Planning Commissioners of Ontario. And as you may or may not be aware of, a couple of weeks ago, RPCO released a position paper dealing with this question of what is the housing supply in Ontario look like? So we surveyed our members and we asked them to give us, based on the provincial land needs assessment methodology, a snapshot of their housing supply and their housing inventory in various stages. That could be development applications under review, all the way to applications in terms of building permits, and rough estimates on some of the intensification, and especially the small-scale intensification like accessory apartments and base laneway housing. That work concluded that within Ontario, we have approximately 1.25 million units in various stages of the planning pipeline. So that's about 85% of the 1.5 million units that Mike Moffat identified was the consumer preference-driven need for housing. What's interesting, though, is when you start to look at how that supply breaks down. Within the greater Golden Horseshoe, the supply is almost about a third between low density, medium density, and high density housing. But within the GTA, we see a real significant shift where it's approximately 7% low density, 8% medium density, and 85% high density. So that's a combination of response to the market in terms of where people want to live, in terms of living in complete community cities in an urban environment, as well as planning policy, encouraging growth to be around in strategic locations, transit supportive growth, and meeting other density and other objectives that we have to deal with. So, as a planner, I think we have to recognize that a unit is not a unit, and there are consumer preferences, what people would like. I've always said I would like to have a park with a unicorn at the end of the rainbow, but I'm never going to have that. We see that with consumers saying what is their preferences, and there's a recognition that affordability is a major issue. 2 weeks ago, the National Bank issued their paper that said, in Toronto, a household would have to save 312 months to come up with a down payment for a home. In Hamilton, it's 80 months. So that's one of the challenges that we have to respond to, is this affordability issue, and how do we look at increasing supply? In particular, is how do you translate that paper supply into bricks and mortar on the ground? And that's where we in Hamilton have been focusing, and many of our partner municipalities or members of RPCO are really looking at how do you unlock that supply. Some of that supply needs local infrastructure that a developer is responsible for. There's other elements of that supply is at a trunk level, higher level, that the upper tier municipality or the municipality is responsible for delivering for, and what is the funding to deal with that. In Hamilton, one of the things that we've really been focusing on is how do we get to shovel-ready land so that it's available for development supply. So we've been focusing on issues of redevelopment, reurbanization, and urban residential intensification and renewal. And in order to facilitate that, we've been updating our official plan policies and our zoning regulations so that essentially people are starting at a site plan stage as opposed to having to come in and spend years and years of dealing with the rezoning process. Although with Bill 109, that zoning process now should be truncated. Our council has made the commitment we will not be refunding fees, so that development applications will have to be dealt with in 90 or 120 days on the assumption that they made a complete application. From a zoning perspective, though, what we did is in 2017, we updated the zoning for the downtown secondary plan. That brought potential between 50 to 100,000 units, in theory, could be developed within the downtown, depending on if everything was to be full build-out. Along the LRT corridor, we tested it and we pre-zoned that entire corridor so it is shovel-ready, whether it be for it could be in some cases just a fourplex conversion all the way up to a mid or high-rise building, and including at some of our major commercial areas. The commercial and mixed-use zoning was completely updated to allow for residential as of right, and today we're starting to see that actually happening. Eastgate Square is in for a major redevelopment based on the vision that was set out through the official plan and through the zoning, and we're seeing at some of our other shopping malls where we're now getting residential development coming in, rental residential development is coming into the shopping malls. At the other end of the spectrum, though, we've also been looking at that sort of smaller scale intensification opportunities. About 2 years ago, we updated all our zoning regulations to allow for a single 1, 2, or 3 units as of right within an existing dwelling or a laneway house. And then earlier this year, we went further. We actually put an end to exclusionary zoning. So now in most of the city, a single, a semi, or a street townhouse is permitted as of right, or you can convert an existing dwelling to a fourplex. Plus, you can, in some cases, do a laneway house. So we're looking at the number of units and to reduce the standards. We don't require parking. We're not going to put on these standards that actually take away from the benefits that have to be dealt with. So that's where the city has been focusing in terms of the intensification, renewal, and reurbanization focus. We're currently working on around our major transit station areas to align with the LRT, so that will be shovel-ready from a zoning perspective. And then this week, in response to the MMH's decision to expand the city's urban boundary, our planning committee, it was last week, they approved a strategy and a framework for going forward as to how we are going to advance the secondary planning for the approximate 1,600 hectares of land that was brought into our urban area, which would then accommodate more than sufficient, it's more than land than we need to accommodate growth to 2051. So through a combination of gentle intensification, significant policy and OP changes and zoning changes to deal with intensification and renewal, and then we're now looking at our greenfield areas as well in order to provide that full continuum of housing supply, and in trying to align that with our infrastructure master plans to get to that fundamental question of unlocking that paper supply.
Yeah, that's terrific, Steve. I think that's really key, right, is how do you get the land to that place where it's truly ready, where the infrastructure meets the land supply, meets the policy framework. And I'm going to ask Tara, maybe I should just spend a few minutes with us talking about how the planning policy or framework legislation, is it enough? Is there more tools that we need than we've already seen starting to be presented through this new legislation? What's your thoughts in that area?
Thanks very much. So I think everyone in this room today shares the goal of recognizing that we need to increase our housing supply, and at the region we've been continually working on advancing our development review function to advance it as quickly as we can to help unlock that. The legislation did shine a spotlight on the housing crisis, and I think that's been great for these discussions that we're having today, and the ability for us to come together and do some out-of-the-box thinking and look for some innovative approaches, and that's always a great outcome. I think that the key thing that's needed, and Minister Clark sort of talked about it earlier today, is we all have a lot of great perspectives and ideas, and we need to come together and come up with solutions that truly resolve the issue and are able to advance housing in a quick way that is achievable and will meet the needs of everyone going forward. I think one area at the region that we identify as potentially where the legislation could have gone further is we already delegated all of our official plan amendments and so on to the local municipalities as long as there wasn't a regional conformity issue. So those changes didn't really affect us. But the one area that we are a bit concerned about is that the legislation doesn't recognize the important growth management function that the region oversees and the need to align the infrastructure to the growth as we go forward. So that's one piece that I think is critical. And then the only other piece I'd like to mention is sort of building on what Steve said, the supply issue, which supply is not supply, right? We need some ability to be able to provide supply that can meet the needs of our community, and whether that's, larger apartment units or more rental units, those types of things are areas that we think could be advanced a little bit further.
Okay, well, that's really helpful, Tara, and I think again the issue of being ready is a significant subject for everyone in the room, and that linkage to having the necessary and important infrastructure to support this ambitious housing supply problem and linking that to a regional growth plan, I know is a conversation that anyone who's sitting in the room and is a regional planner is acutely aware of in terms of making sure that we can match up that supply. Before I turn it over to Heather to talk a little bit about achieving the vision and some of the purpose and the role, and I think this is exciting for this panel because we have different responsibilities and the importance of conversation and collaboration between all of us, including the development industry, and how we can be successful is so important. Did anyone other than Steve and Tara want to just comment on the supply issue before we turn over to Heather to talk a little bit about how we are intending to go about it and the important role that different agencies and corporations can play?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that. I think I would just echo a little bit of what Steve said. I think in Toronto in particular, we have there's not that many big tall tower development sites left, and I think the city has established policies around, as Steve talked about, same in Toronto, garden suites, laneway suites. I know for many people in this room, those are not in their wheelhouse in terms of the size of development. But I think mid-rise development, I think we need to look and be nimble and move fast at a lot of other typologies of development. The city is, and I think as of right zoning, a lot of that is now those policy changes are happening. And then I would say I think the minister said it well, but it can't be just words. It has to be true policy alignment. We deal with a lot of affordable housing projects on behalf of the city through our Housing Now program, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to align the commentary that we're hearing with the actual operational aspects of that. Yes. And it's causing delays, and then you have pandemics that occur and so forth. So I think true policy alignment at all levels of government with all the tools on the table, and the development community, small investors in particular, maybe smaller developers looking at sort of these other types of as of right opportunities to help grow the supply.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really important perspective because often we look at it as a kind of where are the blank pieces of land, but there are so few blank pieces of land left. So being creative and looking at the supply from a different point of view is so important. And that brings me to you, Heather. Do you want to talk about supply a little before we jump into...
Yeah, I just wanted to build on Tara's point, and Vic is speaking to it as well, and then also the minister's remarks with regards to, the ambition. And I think everyone in this room recognizes the challenge that is before us with regards to solving the housing crisis once and for all for here in this region. 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. I think we all recognize that that's a very ambitious goal, and it'll require the cooperation and the collaboration and some of the challenges of all the people in this room and all the various facets of the industry in order to solve the problem. I think it's wonderful, and people who know me know that I love really ambitious challenges, and I think if we can align behind this goal, and we really do need to leave no stone unturned if we're going to achieve this together, but the outcome is worth, the effort. So I'm hoping, through everyone's words today are inspiring, and just the collaboration of the tremendous industry that we have in this province, that we will get there or as close to there as possible, because everyone and the future generations need us to be successful.
Absolutely. And Heather, as you kind of envision from the point of view of Infrastructure Ontario, your role in helping make that vision unfold, what will success look like for you in terms of your responsibilities?
Thanks for the question. I think to talk about where we want to see ourselves in 10 years' time with regards to Infrastructure Ontario and implementing the Transit-Oriented Communities program, it's really important to look at where we've been in the past and the government approach to infrastructure investment in the past. Think about how we're creating the conditions for success today, and then how that hopefully leads to these ambitious objectives in the future. Historically, if we think about it, government approached transit infrastructure investment without that broader vision to try to create bigger returns for the public beyond just the delivery of transit, which is tremendous and is transformational in and of itself. But when I think of the policy environment that was involved, there was no levers to pull or no ability to incur additional costs to acquire strategic land holdings or incur additional construction costs to allow for intensification right on top of the stations or immediately adjacent. So when you fast forward to today, there's been some big changes in the approach through the Subways expansion program. Right from day one, when that program was announced, there was a vision to ensure the development of density and complete communities at those stations, with the strategic objective to deliver housing, to increase ridership, and to create complete communities that we all talk about with a mix of uses, residential, retail, commercial. To do so, there have been some, the government put in place the Build Transit Faster Act, which gave us certain tools to, again, think creatively and think just a little bit outside of the box, and literally the glass box that is the station, to allow for intensification and future development. The second piece that they put in place were modifications to the Infrastructure Act, as well as to the Planning Act that we're all aware of here in this room. And so working in partnership with Metrolinx and the Ministry of Infrastructure, Infrastructure Ontario is now working very hard to develop these future transit-oriented communities at each station node. So 10 years from now, I think what we'll see is the start of these communities coming up out of the ground. And I think one of the things we don't talk about a lot is a lot of that development can't happen until the transit construction is complete. But the work of the Transit-Oriented Communities team today has identified 35 station development sites to deliver along our Ontario line, Yonge North Subway Extension, Scarborough Subway Extension, and Eglinton Crosstown West Extension. And all these projects are actually underway. So if you drive around the city, it's quite fascinating, or I think it's really exciting to see the transit coming out of the ground. And what we're going to see 10 years from now is that these communities will start to be built. Some of the units might be complete, so for a total of 80,000 housing units, with a construction value of $35 billion, creating 375,000 construction jobs and 80,000 permanent jobs in the future communities. So these are really true mixed-use communities with that direct access to transit. So I hope, 10 years from now, we'll start to see these successes being realized, and it'll all be based on lessons learned in the past, how we're approaching the problem today in direct coordination with the transit delivery in order to realize these tremendous benefits in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I think, sometimes it takes a whole career and lifetime for some of you in the room who are younger. You'll have that opportunity to stand and look back and see that growth as it's happened over time. And some of the challenges that I think we'll have is, can we actually speed up all of the moments of the cycle? And will the development industry be able to actually construct and deal with their responsibilities if the planners are able to bring the land on stream and bring the infrastructure to the doorstep? And one of the questions I had was for Vic, just to talk a little bit about what's the role of a Create Toronto, a special purpose corporation, in moments like this. What do you see as some of the key benefits in terms of your ability to really look at that challenge of progressing plans through the development phase and getting them into the marketplace?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think maybe where I'll start, just for some of those in the room that may not know Créatio or our history, we really act as the City of Toronto's strategic real estate advisory shop, Center of Excellence. Prior to the creation of Créatio, 24 divisions, agencies, corporations managed its own real estate, made its own decision-making. So you might get a community center built right next to a library with no coordination. If there was coordination, I won't say it would be by accident, but it may very well be. And so clearly not efficient. Clearly we have a growing city with growing needs. So I think the first responsibility of an organization like ours is to take a really strategic approach to optimizing the real estate, first and foremost for the programmatic needs of the city, to provide services for the city. And so I think we've taken that view in terms of looking at the real estate, understanding that real estate has value depending on its use, right? It doesn't have an absolute value. Its use is its value. And so we've tried to leverage that value to be able to deliver economic outcomes for the city, because the city can't just buy all the real estate it needs to deliver all the services. And so that means partnering with the private sector. That means developing that real estate. So I think the benefit of an organization like ours is, firstly, we are single purpose, right? Yes. We don't have the distraction, as our colleagues at the city do, of all of the other pressures that they have to deliver the council-directed priorities. We are singularly focused on optimizing the value of the city's real estate, upwards of $20 billion of value. And so we can really focus on that. Also, our structure allows us to be nimble and focused. And, being a center of excellence, we do have, we act as a developer. I mean, we have the development planning expertise to be able to rezone sites, to move efficiently through that process, and to work with our colleagues at City Planning to get sites onto market as fast as we can.
Yep.
And so I think that combination allows us to do that. I think it would be a challenge for the city itself, who acts as a regulator,
right.
As many of those in the room would know, to both drive the land use and the development opportunity, as well as be the regulator at the same time. So I think we really have the opportunity to sort of straddle both we kind of act as a private entity, but with a very much a public sector, public good lens.
Yes.
And I think that creates a really unique opportunity for us. And I think I've had discussions with others from other municipalities. I think there's lots of learning for others in the model that hopefully we can sort of specialize and optimize.
Yeah, Vic, I think it's a very important question, and I know in the time we've had tonight, we've just barely begun to sort of skim the surface of the question of what are the key elements, and sitting on this panel, or not sitting on this panel tonight, is the development industry. And I think, as I turn to our panel members and we think about, if there were to be two key things that you'd want to see continue in terms of collaboration and coordination to really see this ambitious plan progress what would they be? And I'll just turn the floor over and ask you if, what do you think those things would be? And if there was a developer sitting in front of me, we can speak for them as well. I was having a great conversation at dinner tonight talking about, the ability of the market to actually to bring the skills and the tradesmen to this country, along with the people we already have, in order to be able to build these units. But what are the two key things in your minds that are going to help us really truly make ourselves successful in moving forward on the housing supply challenge that we've been handed? Anyone?
I don't want to monopolize as I've just spoken, but I think you hit on it. I think labor shortages is a big problem, right? Cost of construction, we're not seeing cost of construction coming down with the slowing down of the development pipeline at the moment.
Right.
And I was having a very interesting conversation at my table. There seems to be a misalignment of kind of the nature of the immigrants that are coming into the country. We're hitting record highs, yet we still have shortages in certain sectors. So again, policy alignment at all levels has to happen, right? So I think the cost of construction, which I think a lot of the folks in this room can't do a lot about, but I think labor is a big problem. And I guess I would just, I think the development community, the folks that I certainly talk to, I think they're quite passionate about recognizing their role and responsibility in creating affordable housing and more supply in general, but affordable supply.
Right.
And so I would just encourage, shave a point or half a point or whatever, how many basis points you can off your returns to deliver much needed affordable housing. Because if we don't have affordable housing in this city, it's not going to be the kind of city that we all grew up in and that we all want for our kids.
Exactly.
So I would just encourage your investors that help support you to look at that and put a real ESG lens on the need to deliver more affordable housing.
Well, it certainly tells a story that we're all in this together. Like, no one party, no one planner, no one corporation, no one developer is going to be able to solve for the entirety of and the complexity of the challenges that we're confronted with. And so that collaboration and that communication is so critical about, asking them to shave a cost here or financing piece there. Needs to come with the right tools and the places that they can go in and they can actually achieve those bottom lines and still make it, a profitable project to perform. Did you want to, Tara, add to that?
Sure. So I guess the one piece in Peel Region is the targets in Bill 23 are pretty ambitious for Peel Region. They're about 90% of the growth that we had forecasted in our regional Peel official plan to 2051. So that's a good amount of growth planned for the next 8 years. And from the region's perspective, our role is, again, I've never talked about water and wastewater so much as I have in the past 3 or 4 months, but our role is to provide the water and wastewater. And I guess, sort of financial concerns of upfronting those costs, even assuming that we're able to do it, but then we need to rely on the development to follow, right, for those development charges. So that's
to pay the debt.
That's one big piece.
Yes.
And affordable housing would be the other piece that I would raise as well. And I think there's many opportunities for partnerships for affordable housing between lots of the different stakeholders in this room to be able to bring affordable housing to the forefront and have success with affordable housing projects.
Great. Steve?
When we were having the debate at committee and council around the zoning bylaw reform, and they were talking, the staff were talking about conversions and they were giving all the technical answers. And then finally I had to look at council and say, really, we're talking about the end of exclusionary zoning. The flip side to that, though, means how do we ensure that it's inclusionary? Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at this, this numbers that RPCO put together, the region is changing in terms of the built form, what's getting built. It's going to be medium and higher density form organized around higher orders of transit. But how do we ensure that the homes that are getting built meet that full continuum of needs, both from an affordability perspective as well as what the community needs are? So are we building homes for investors? Are they for the renters, or are they for people who want to live there as their home, and using that lens? Because very often when we're looking at condominium projects, it's a 100-unit building, 98 units are 350 square feet or less, and there's 1 or 2 larger units. That will probably not resolve the issues that we have today. I mean, you heard the minister talking about investing in homelessness. We have that challenge in Hamilton. It's a significant challenge, so I really think we have to broaden the lens as to the housing type that's getting built and where it's getting built to make sure it's affordable housing, it's housing that people can afford, or attainable housing. All of that is sort of on the table for conversation and discussions, and how to ensure that we translate those development approvals into meeting that full continuum of housing without requiring municipal regulation such that 15% of the units be 3-bedroom condos, et cetera, et cetera. That will have to be a default if we can't sort this out as a partnership between municipalities as the development approval and facilitator, and the investor and the builder of those condominium units.
Well, we have a minute left, and I think it's been a great conversation and basically just skimming the surface of I think, the responsibility that all the panel members are feeling in doing their part to drive the vision forward. And I think key to all of that is going to be the ability to continue to collaborate and talk about what each of us are doing in our respective roles and the entire continuum of the model till the family moves into that unit and can declare, yes, we've been successful. So with that, and 35 seconds left, we'll conclude our panel discussion. And thank you, Richard, for giving us this opportunity this evening.
Very nicely done, Mary Frances. 35 seconds to spare. That's amazing. I think we've never had that happen before. So well handled. And Mary Frances, just quickly at a note, as echoing what Andrew said, your legacy in your career as a leader in the space of getting the right kind of development, the right kind of density, the right kind of mix between transit and oriented in suburban context, no less, is something that I think is inspiring us all as we look to the incredible challenges in front of us in the future, as we've just been discussing all evening and will be discussing for years to come. So thank you very much, and congratulations on your retirement. Steve, Tara, Vic, and Heather, thank you for being our panelists this evening to wrap up our 9th annual. So next year, put in your calendars. We haven't got a date yet, but put in your calendars anyways. Our 10th is coming. And before that, though, of course, as you know, we have our big May 14th to 16th spring meeting. If you aren't yet registered, this truly is a unique opportunity to intersect with one of the big real estate conferences in North America that hasn't been in this city since 1985. So it's not the cheapest, I'll admit, but when you consider that you're not having to do airfare and you're not having to do hotel and all of that, it's actually quite a bargain. So with that, I want to also thank, just last quick minute before we start talking, is our sponsors, our annual sponsors, our table sponsors at this annual dinner, I should say. We really, truly, you are fueling us. The work you heard that Renee was speaking to, the mission work that we do that's so, so important, is not something that we can do without evenings like tonight. So thank you, thank you, thank you for the support. It means so much, and it does so much. So we really, really want to thank you. Thank you, Oliver Bonaccini. Thank you to my staff team. Thank you to the volunteers who put this together. A lot of work, as you know, goes into evenings like this. So I really want to thank them. And with that, I wish you all a good evening. Good night.